podcaster, entertainer, philosopher, comedian, Mike Usenick. Usenick Unleashed.
Hello, Sam. How are you doing, my buddy?
Hi, Mike. Long time no see.
Yeah, long time no see. Now your audio is extremely low, but I like how before we started, you couldn't hear me. Now I can't hear you very well.
How about now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it sounds like you're like 17 miles away, and you're either that or you're whispering, and I love it. I love life is Spinal Tap. That I've come up with that conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking now. Everything is plugged in.
Sounds good now. Sounds good now. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, everything is volumes. Maybe it was your intro that drowned everything out.
Maybe it was. That thing's a little hectic at times. But I'm glad we finally got to do this. I'm very excited because me and you are very similar in ways, and I'm shocked we haven't crossed paths sooner.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking for over a year now, isn't it? Easily.
Yeah, and you've done art for some of my favorite bands. You also have explored the occult. I'm surprised that we haven't spoken one-on-one before this. Can we at least not wait another year before the next time?
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
So when it comes to the occult and folklore, do you just enjoy the imagery, or do you actually dive deep into the occult and folklore?
God, that's just an entire can of golden serpents, isn't it?
That's why I asked.
I mean, where'd you begin with that? Yeah, I love the imagery. Who doesn't love the imagery? It's definitely something that's intrigued me since childhood, going to museums and looking at all the big old galleries in the UK, particularly in Liverpool and Lime Street, the Walker Art Gallery, just phenomenal oil paintings, hundreds of years old, thousands of years old. But the occult in general, it spans every facet of science, mythology. It's just part of life, isn't it?
Very much.
Most people don't realize that, but yeah, when we start to really look at, natural history collecting for one, and the cataloging of animals themselves, you can find all of these idiosyncrasies between mythological animals that they weren't quite sure if were real, and today's fascination with cryptozoology. It's the same thing. It just renames itself over and over. But yeah, it's always been a fascination. In terms of magic and practicing, I think everybody does magic in their own way without them realizing. Just like Alan Moore, great writer Alan Moore, fellow Brit, he was always talking about magic. Still does, of course. He's not dead. But he's always talking about artwork, and writing itself is a process of magic and bringing things into reality. So I'm not necessarily one to stand in a circle of salt and bring up demons, but at the same time, I will conjure ideas, and I'm a big believer in manifestation. So if you really want something to happen, I firmly believe you can will it to happen. Just like getting me on this podcast finally, we willed it to happen, and it happened.
We've been trying, and next time, like I said, let's not wait, because I have a feeling that we're going to dive through some pretty deep topics as we have through text.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to the occult, what a lot of people don't realize, and with mythology, like you mentioned, a lot of mythology, and I'm even mentioning major belief systems too, they speak in my opinion, a very symbolic way, and they all tell very similar stories that even science, in a way, describes it in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I'm sort of saying. Is you have, your pop culture icons like Aleister Crowley that everyone's heard of, and the Anton LaVey's and all of the other little sort of showmans and magicians, prior to the sort of real explosion of popular TV culture, they really were the kind of the sideshow people. But what they were drawing from were very old, ancient texts and belief systems that they would co-opt and mix together and try and find a deeper meaning, sometimes genuinely looking for something, whether it's to cheat death or to talk to the dead. It's always been there. And again, I think today it's just changed its name, it's changed its media format. Now we have this explosion of ghost TV shows, which of course is all, it's just showmanship again. It's not real.
No.
But it entices the emotion and it excites people, and it really does tap into things that are very real, but just not presented in a sort of more tangible, realistic way. It's still very dressed up and fantasized and circus sort of exploded into something that it really isn't. But yeah, that's always been there, isn't it? It's the science aspect of it and alchemy. It's from the year dot, since people started carving things onto stone walls, even before they started painting on them. It's always been there to record things we don't understand, and it's the greatest fear, isn't it? Things that we don't know, we can't know, we don't understand, and death and what's beyond it is the most intriguing thing of all.
It's very intriguing to me also because I dove down this rabbit hole of different mythologies and how they relate. And if you look at the creation stories and you look at them symbolically, not literally, they all started with either chaos or water. Now, water could be chaos could be symbolic of water. Now, science recently, a lot of scientists come to the agreement that more than likely the Earth started off as water. So how did our ancient ancestors know that possibility? And they all collectively knew that possibility.
Yeah. I mean, that's a funny one, isn't it? You're touching on something that's sort of is more and more popping up all over Instagram and all the other social platforms where is it I forget the guy's name. Carlson, the chap with the beard, he's always talking about end of days things that are seemingly cycles of the earth being wiped out over and over and over again, and how we have 400 flood stories from different religions throughout the eons, and it's all talking about the same thing that was clearly a real event. Randall Carlson, that's his name.
I was going to say Tucker Carlson, but that wasn't right. That's some news bloke, ain't it? But no, that does make sense, because if you follow or know anything about, I should say, like Hindus, a lot of Hindus believe that we went through 10 different cycles of death and rebirth, and we're on, I think, the 8th cycle.
Yeah.
And they have a god, I forget their name, but they're supposed to be coming back, and they're supposed to be fighting evil one more time. And that can be followed in a lot of different belief systems, the cycle. And Norse mythology, you have Ragnarok. Like, it's very interesting to state that. And a lot of people, they believe that these mythologies just borrowed from each other, whereas other people believe what you just stated, that it's cycles that constantly go through. And then you have the belief that they were localized floods that they blew way out of proportion, and they made a mythology about it.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? I mean, you're talking about, again, like the word of mouth. There's a game that you Americans play.
Us Americans, what was that shit?
Because the reason being, I say in such a way, is you call it telephone, where someone will tell a story and it will slightly change, and the next person will slightly change it or add to it again, and it becomes something else. You guys call it telephone. In the UK, where I'm originally from, we call that Chinese whispers. Now,
that's interesting.
Over here, that's on face value, most people will say, oh, well, that's just racist. But the idea is, you could kind of paint it that way. But the idea is that as an English person, you're not generally able to speak the Chinese language unless you've studied it, of course. But so when you hear someone talking in Chinese, you're only going to maybe work out what you think they might have said. and then tell the next person. So that's why we call it Chinese whispers, because you can't quite hear them, and even if you can, you're really not sure what they're saying, unless of course you're fluent in Chinese. But in America, you call that telephone, which, unless you have a crackly wire, I don't understand why that really kind of it doesn't translate as much to me in the same way. But the idea of mythologies being passed down and changed and adopted and manipulated into more comfortable meanings, even the Bible itself. I mean, it was rewritten by kings to make them, look better, or so that they could rule over certain areas and have certain rights and whatnot. But things change. I mean, if you look at just the way the world is currently transforming in terms of belief systems and religions, particularly with the sort of the shifting of the populace and the different cultures and the different races and religions that are all intermixing throughout Europe. It's this massive melting pot that's getting all over the place with people fighting at each other because they live in different ways and they're sort of being thrust and forced into each other's existences. And of course, that's happened for thousands and thousands of years in every culture. But when we have these disasters happening and these massacres happening and these war stories that clearly, obviously, have happened, again, throughout thousands of years, some of them were passed down because they were perhaps proud of these stories. Maybe they won a certain war and so they'll write about it. Others were maybe in mourning and didn't want it to happen again, or had heard about this great story. And people will throw things in, as you say, with the exaggerations of lakes, flooding. Maybe there's a bit more rain than usual, and it's sort of an old wives' tale that gets exaggerated. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it? Were there really dragons on the battlefield in medieval times fighting alongside kings on behalf of them? Did this really happen? Probably not. But then you get the creationists, don't you? The Christian sort of offshoot that believe the world is only 6,000 years old and that we did live alongside dinosaurs and they were wiped out in the flood, kind of thing. All those variations of that strange belief. But then again, only recently we've just found the remains of wooden structures that are seemingly with carpentry slotted together that are, I think it's 80,000 or maybe a few 100,000. I forget the figure. It's a ridiculous amount, more than the 30,000 that we're supposed to have had a beginning in our civilization. But so this shows we've been around a lot longer than they say, and that's always been a theory, isn't it, that Egypt is much older than we think it is. And some even say that the pyramids weren't even built by the Egyptians because there's no writing on them. They're not tombs. There's no bodies inside them. They don't even know what they're for.
I'm glad you mentioned that because Egypt has always fascinated me. And recently they decided to start digging under the pyramids and they found tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
So they carbon dated, or however that process is. I might even be wrong on my terminology, but they dated one of the stones that they had found. And allegedly Egypt is like 5,000 to 10,000 years older than we had originally assumed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy because we thought the pyramids were impressive.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Someone had, I saw something online the other day where they were talking about these columns, the sort of like 10 or 15 vertical columns that have spiral staircases that go, a few 100 to 1,000 feet below the pyramids. And it's absolute nonsense in my mind anyway, because you can't scan through stone. There's no, unless you're using some kind of electro scanner that's detecting the substance of the rock itself. You can't scan through the rock. You can only just date rock because it's with the carbon dating. You have to have an organic material, whether it's charcoal or some deposit. You can't even date rock unless you're looking at the actual material it's made of from a radiation point of view. And so that's only a recent discovery, which, as you're talking about there, that we're finally starting to figure out how old things really are. But these columns that people have recently claimed that they've scanned underneath the pyramids. Well, first of all, how do you scan underneath the pyramid without scanning through the pyramid, which you can't do? Because, I mean, look at the size. Where are you scanning from? A helicopter? You can't scan down through the rock, even if you were. top, right?
We
And
got to
then
call a doctor and get an MRI on the pyramid.
so how are you going to do that? And even if you could, say there's someone finds some weird secret doorway at the ground level, and you can walk into the pyramid, which you can't, but let's say you could, you still can't scan down through the earth thousands of feet. And what's the other alternative? You can't scan sideways through the earth because it's a globe, isn't it? Unless you dig down 1,000 feet, at which point, why don't you just dig it up? So it's all nonsense. It's all lies. And there's tons of that shit everywhere. But yeah, that's been happening with all kinds of things, religion, the occult, as we're talking about there. It's just a lot of it's showman. Today it's for clicks. Today it's for TikTok and just all this nonsense that people make money from it by regurgitating false information, which is another bugbear of mine when it comes to the ghost shows and the Bigfoot shows, when they start regurgitating information that's wrong because they saw it on someone's Instagram, that's annoying.
This is why I got this ticker at the bottom of my screen. It says, disclaimer, the opinions shared on this podcast are based on our current understanding and interpretations. We encourage you to do your own research and come up with your own conclusions.
Perfect.
The views expressed here are personal and may evolve as new information accumulates.
There you go. Yeah. So if I'm entirely wrong, I'm covered. Perfect.
Yeah. But the thing that always fascinated me, and a theory that I've had for a long time, and it's not a new theory, and it kind of falls in line with like the ancient astronaut theory, kind of, where we may have started off as underwater animals and evolved from that, because they have found a lot of underwater pyramids, and they've discovered that more than likely Atlantis or similar areas possibly existed. So either we lived along the same time as underwater creatures, or we evolved from them. And it's an old theory that that's where we might have gotten all of our knowledge.
Interesting. It reminds me of a little anecdote. Now, I don't know whether this is true, so people may want to check this, but I once heard that there have been more books written about Atlantis than any other subject.
Mm-hmm. That is, from my understanding, true, because I heard the same thing.
It's bizarre. But as for underwater pyramids, Atlantis itself, there's been so many claims as to where it is. Even today, people are still coming up with, or maybe it's over here, or maybe it's over there. But you must have heard of the Eye of Africa in the northwest.
Dude, I was just about to say that. You're like reading my mind. The Eye of the Sierra, they believe, was where it was.
It looks just perfect. Everything lines up in terms of its description, the size, the layout. It's, to me, that's probably where it was,
Well, that makes sense. Oh, sorry. I thought you was done. Go ahead. Continue.
No, that's it. It's just, as for the underwater pyramids, shit floods, doesn't it? We're already finding, again, recently, there was a whole series of statues and columns and sort of weird old temple structures that were predating Greece and Egypt that were found in the Mediterranean under the water recently. There's like a whole bunch of stuff that they're now pulling up and trying to preserve, but they don't know who built that. So, it goes on and on and on, doesn't it?
Well, what's fascinating to me, though, is that if the Eye of the Sierra, let's say Atlantis was the Eye of the Sierra, scientifically, it is believed that we all came from areas in Africa. And if you look at any mythology, 9 times out of 10, the god of wisdom is a sea entity. So it's very interesting that most gods of wisdom is symbolic of water.
Interesting. Yeah. It's is it Thoth, the ibis, that also sometimes a baboon, is the god of knowledge?
The god of knowledge, and in some esoteric circles, this isn't proven by mythology, but in some esoteric circles, he was an Atlantean.
Ooh. Well, I suppose it's a water bird, so aqua monkey, maybe. Never really was too familiar with why it was also a baboon occasionally as being the symbol of the same god. It's so far removed from an ibis, isn't it? Why two things at once? It's very strange.
Egypt was so old that their mythology more than likely just evolved over time, and then he just changed into, because an ibis is more so they viewed that as a smarter animal than a baboon, more than likely, so they just evolved it, kind of like Set. He started off as like a god of chaos, but they needed that chaos, and then when Yahweh, people worshiping Yahweh, started coming in and trying to invade, they turned Set into the god of outsiders and invaders. So I think a lot of the times they did it for political reasons.
Yeah. And what is that animal? I mean, really, what is it? Is it
Set?
Yeah, is it an anteater? Is it a donkey?
Actually, a donkey.
Yeah,
yeah. That was that was the joke. They're saying your god's a jackass.
Oh, really?
So yeah, they turned him into a donkey.
An interesting one. Yeah, I've not heard that one. But yeah, the curved face, it's almost like got a camel's mouth the way it droops down. But at the same time, it's got really square ears. So, I mean, who knows? You know, maybe
it started off as an anteater.
Could have. Yeah, maybe.
So did you ever, like, when you started going into the occult side of things, was there one particular person that, like, you read a book and you're like, oh, this fascinates me, or does it just go into your paranormal as a child?
Oh, I couldn't really pinpoint it. You know, it's been an organic interest that's just expanded, primarily through art college. You know, you discover heavy metal, and then of course you discover Ozzy Osbourne, and you discover Aleister Crowley.
You're not helping the whole satanic panic. You know that?
I mean, it still goes on today, doesn't it? You know, even today with Dungeons and Dragons, even with Harry Potter, you know, it's still going on today where certain groups of people are overly panicking and concerned about fiction. You know, it's all very well that it's based on certain things, and from my own artwork standpoint, I'm a big fan of things that are based on reality or trying to make something that it is impossibly real to be incredibly realistic, which is when I'm illustrating things that shouldn't exist, or things that, in terms of cryptozoology, for example, if something has been seen by people, but we don't have one on a slab for a scientist to cut open, you know, there's never been a confirmed type specimen to examine. It's my job as an artist to bring that to life as though, well, what would it look like if it were real? So I appreciate things like Dungeons and Dragons when they try to draw from real religions and real imagery and symbols, even some of the, you know, the arcane glyphs and symbols that you see carved on stones in ancient temples and stuff with a dragon sitting on the top of it. It's all sort of stems from that influence, doesn't it? But there are people who are very frightened by that, and it's concerning that there isn't more of an education to it, with more of an exact science, so to speak, to really say, well, this is actually representative of this, and this strange animal-headed god is actually the god of love, or whatever, you know. Because when you do open certain people's eyes, they really do kind of think, oh God, you know, what have I been missing? A lot of people
Isn't that the part of the whole point of the occult, though, is seeking that knowledge and exposing the lies that you've been taught as a child?
In one way, yeah. I mean, occult itself is just simply hidden information, isn't it? That's just the meaning. It's just secret info. Well, not necessarily even secret, but just tomes of stuff that you should know, and it's sitting there for you to look at if you want to look at it. It's just how far do you want to read? Yeah.
It's fucked up because I have a friend whom I had on last time, and his name's Jeremy Crow, and he's been an occultist for like 30 plus years. And he helped open a church in Texas called the Greater Church of Lucifer. He's a Luciferian. Now, without knowing anything about this church, what they believed in, whatever, they got so much death threats that the landlord had to cancel their lease.
Wow.
And it's sad because their whole belief system is predating Christianity. Their entire belief system is pretty much, they use the term Lucifer, which originally was Latin meaning light bringer. And there's a lot of people throughout history and mythology that have that archetype, like Prometheus. and it's a form of heroism. They aspire to be that kind of person in reality. They don't worship anything. They just aspire. And just because they used a Latin word that people assumed was this evil thing, they got so many death threats. And that's horrible because that happens to people all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I did a portrait of Aleister Crowley to sort of go along with a series that I was doing, and I did Edgar Allan Poe, I did H.P. Lovecraft, and they've all got, you know, their own little stigmas attached to them. Each of them do. Lovecraft, most people who haven't read his work or aren't a fan of his work or aren't a fan of horror in general may be familiar with the sort of history of him being a racist. But a lot of people will point out that at the time when he was around, everyone was a racist. He may have just been a bit more vocal about it and perhaps a little bit too racist, if you will. But it wasn't anything that was completely, you know, he wasn't the only one. So people who will say that they're fans of Lovecraft or enjoy his writing and his fictional stories about cosmic gods, you know, that you need to sort of separate the art from the artist in that sense. But what you're talking about there as well is you know, as I say, I did a portrait of Crowley, but then I started getting all kinds of hateful messages, or people that I've worked with in the past will have messaged me and said, "Hey, why have you done that? You know, I can't believe you support this guy." And it's nothing to do with that at all.
The guy's dead.
You know, it's as though, you know, you have people who sell T-shirts with Charles Manson or John Wayne Gacy, you know, and they paint pictures of him, they sell T-shirts of it and stuff, and they celebrate serial killers. And I just think, you know, hang on, that man raped little boys. You know, why are you wearing a T-shirt about that? Like, it's cool.
Right.
So I understand where people come from when they look at some of my portraits. You know, I did a portrait of Baphomet, and people will say, well, you know, that's Satan. And I'll say, well, not really. You know, that's not where I'm coming from, you know. And it's really sad when you see a whole mob with the pitchforks and the fire going after something like your friend's church there without really doing the reading and the research as to what it's actually about. The same thing happened with, you know, you have the Church of Satan, but then you have the Satanic Temple, and they're two completely wildly different groups. And I was friends with a few people from the Satanic Temple in Los Angeles a number of years ago when they first started to sort of emerge, in a sense, and they had chapters all across the US. And so this was in the Los Angeles area. And unfortunately, they were using the name as a sort of a metaphor. They weren't actually worshiping the devil, as you're saying there. They weren't sort of, you know, praising Satan. What they were doing was they were using it as a metaphor, as the first one or first being to rebel against God, and to go against the government, to go against the establishment. And what they were really kind of trying to call for was support for people in need, like the homeless or homeless women in general, who need medical assistance on the street. You know, on a monthly basis, they'll need certain things. And it was a really good charity-based group to begin with, although unfortunately there were certain groups and members across, and there always is in anything. It's like you have a football stadium, there's always going to be hooligans in there that will ruin it for everyone else. And so every now and then you'll get a bad apple that will bring the bad name to that group, and then all of a sudden they paint it with the brush, and the people that initially hated them for the name alone will say, see, I told you they were bad. And so unfortunately that happens far too often. When a good thing goes bad, it's just, you know, it makes you wonder, like, was it really a good idea to start off with the name to begin with? You know, because it is attention seeking, grabbing for a good reason, but then it, you know,
well, the way it was explained, and it made sense, was as if they were just an atheistic organization trying to bring equality, religious equality, and fight an oppressive system, nobody would have paid attention. Yeah. But if they use the term Satan, then people actually listen.
That's the thing, which I find a little disingenuous, because you are, in a sense, celebrating something as a moniker, regardless of the, you know, very admirable metaphor concept. You're still using the shock value. much in the same way as Marilyn Manson does with the name. Marilyn Monroe, Charles Manson. It's a juxtaposed of America, of the whole sort of oxymoron of both of them, to the good and the bad together, which heaven and hell, it all stems down to that same thing, the shock value. It's going to get the attention, but if you're writing songs about real problems or real issues, whether it's bullying, as Manson would write about, or whether it's Rob Zombie singing about his favorite horror film, it's all about real culture of real things happening to real people. But when you start using the label for something that it isn't, yeah, you're going to get the attention, but at some point people are going to say, well, I feel a little bit lied to or disappointed. And I even met people who had joined. I went to a couple of meetings, and before we did, it was like a big event where it was the largest gathering of Satanists in history, apparently, and that's how they sort of build it. In Los Angeles was a huge event at this club of several floors, and you had bands playing. Three Teeth played, Author and Punisher played. I was painting live on canvases. There was all kinds of things going on. But at the same time, it was the shock value that drew people in to raise money for good causes. But there were, as I say, people who were there for the evil stuff, to get their kicks off, to cause trouble, to be the bad apples. And some just simply didn't understand or care to understand what the organization was for or what it was about. They just saw the name and went with it as though face value that's what it was, and unfortunately got it completely wrong. And people would look at them and think, well, hang on, why are you even here? What are you doing? So that's a massive kettle of fish that just really boiled over. I believe they're still going. I haven't spoken to these people in sort of 10 years, 8, 9, 10 years now, but it's the way it is.
I get your point. I really do. But with their, I'm going to call them a religion because legally that's what it is. With their religion, it kind of makes sense to call it Satanism looking at it nowadays, because symbolically they are fighting against an oppressive government who is godlike and is trying to control them.
I mean, that's what it was told to me, is that it was the metaphor of the first one to go against. It was their mascot was Satan. To sort of say, well, the first person ever to go against the authority, let's use that as the concept for this entire movement. And it was a great idea. You're right there. It was a really good idea. But at the same time, there were certain aspects of it which, little too much too far wrong people got.
Like Lucien Greaves putting his balls on somebody's grave.
Up, but yeah, that was kind of disappointing for me. I was just like, really? I'm not sure I like that. You could say the same. You take any of the worst person in history who did awful things, and then desecrating their grave, it doesn't change anything. It's not. Yeah. You're not helping anybody by doing that. You're just having a laugh, and people are, some people are going to find that funny, and other people are going to sort of be turned away from your organization for doing something crass and kind of childish in a way. It didn't achieve anything other than publicity, perhaps, to bring in more views and clicks, but really what for? I'm glad you brought it that way, because it was something that it didn't sit right with me.
It's very unfortunate, and I get what you mean, but it's also, they do so much though. So it's kind of like hard to say that like that one stupid thing should define the entire organization, but I get some people will do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is why band members get kicked out, because the band's still good. It doesn't change the record. But if that bass player is a bit of a dick, then, you've got to let it go, haven't you? I don't know.
So when it comes to you doing art, do the bands approach you, or do you approach them, or is it just a mixture?
It's both. It really is a mixture. It's I was headhunted way back in the days of MySpace.
So shit.
We're talking 20 years ago, something like that. A little over 20 years ago. there still is a company called Bravado, and they provide merchandise for bands, and they have their own roster of artists and illustrators and creators who, do the t-shirts and the tour posters and that kind of thing. And they messaged me on MySpace and said, "Hey, we really like your work. Would you like to do some designs for Iron Maiden or for him, or various bands?" And that's sort of where it began in a way. And from there, you have a sort of a collateral to play with when you approach another band, and you can say, "Well, hey, I did the artwork for this band. I'd really like to do the artwork for your band." And so if you drop, and unfortunately it's a world of name dropping, because we're in competition of an ocean of shit out there, especially in the advent of AI, all that horrid nonsense, and all the shameful bands out there using AI. Shame on you. How do they expect anyone to support them if they can't support artists? Boggles my mind. But yeah, it is word of mouth and me approaching bands, or just living in Los Angeles now. It's a lot easier to sort of go for a coffee with someone and say, "Hey, I'd like to do some of your artwork at some point. Let's talk."
So with you, do you still get that like feeling of like excitement when an artist that you admired at a young age or admired in the past gets a hold of you and says, "Hey, do artwork for us, please"?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always going to be a music fan. I'm always the, I'm 47, but I'm still the teenager in his bedroom with posters of Typo Negative on his wall. It's always been a big interest of mine, a big part of my teenage years, and to be in a position where, in 1998, Rob Zombie went solo, and he released Hellbilly Deluxe, and then 20 some years later, I run into him at San Diego Comic-Con, and we talk online a little bit, and I end up doing a piece of artwork that ends up in his album Hellbilly Deluxe 2. And so it's that whole full circle of magic, even at my age now. And I mean, that alone was 10 years ago. So it's like, even now, much more than that, it's like 15 years ago, I still get little buzzes and kicks out of meeting, these artists and these fellow creators. I met Wednesday 13 yesterday at a horror market.
He's cool as hell.
It was a art gallery called Hyena. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like a bookstore. But they put on this horror market, and Wednesday 13 was just there doing signing, selling albums, and so I just went and said hi. So it's still, I mean, he's just another guy, but he's not just another guy. He's this singer and a musician, and was part of Murder Dolls and all these different connections with Slipknot, and I've done artwork here, there, and everywhere. And so it's nice to sort of run into these occasional people in LA. Whereas in the UK, you couldn't really do that unless they're on tour, and then you'd have to sort of wait outside by the bus at the end of the show.
That's wild, because like I'm a big Wednesday fan. Absolutely love his work. Alice Cooper, I love his work. The fact them two collaborated was crazy. Did you hear that song?
No, I'm not sure I did. Maybe I did.
It's really good. I think it was on his last album. Yeah, quite fantastic stuff. So is there any artist, musician, not artist, but musician, we're all artists, but that's more of a subcategory, that you haven't got to work with or do anything for that you would love to work with?
I mean, I'd love to work with Alice Cooper. Big fan going back to my childhood. I remember when, Poison came out, and it was so different, as a kid. You hear all the pop in the charts, because you don't really get into heavy metal unless your parents really force that into your life and they're already into it. And I didn't really have that. I don't have any brothers or sisters either, so it wasn't until I was sort of in my teens that I really discovered heavy metal. But prior to that, yeah, Alice Cooper was in the mainstream charts, and I was always thinking, who's this guy? So I'd love to create something for him, even for fun. I probably will at some point. But there's a whole laundry list. I did a number of pieces for Ozzy Osbourne, but it was never officially used as an album piece or anything like that. But that's a guy that, of course, we're all going to miss him. Is something that I wish I could have done a little more for. That's a little bit of a regret there, but there's same with Dio. That whole generation, they're all starting to sort of disappear. And I hate to say it, but Alice Cooper's, he's what, 76 now.
He's 77, but I think he doesn't realize that yet because he's touring like a motherfucker. I don't know.
That's the other thing. He looks good too. He's, he hasn't really changed much in the last 20 years. He sort of got to an age point where he got the wrinkles, kept dyeing his hair black, but he got the wrinkles, and then he just kind of, it was almost as though it was like, yeah, this will do. And he hasn't really changed. He doesn't look decrepit. He doesn't look too skinny. You see a lot of rock stars either get too skinny or they get too fat. It's when they get super skinny, like Mick Jagger. He's in his 80s and he's still bouncing around the stage.
It's funny that you brought him up because I saw an interview with Alice recently. Well, it's an older interview, but I watched it again recently. And he was asked about retirement. And he's like, well, the Stones are still doing it. And they're like 5 or 6 years older than me. So when they retire, I at least have 5 or 6 more years.
I mean, if you look at Sir Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, I saw footage of Ringo Starr running on stage at his current tour the other day online, and he just looked like he was 30. And there's another one who's just should be in a wheelchair in an old folks' home, but of course, money goes very far, doesn't it?
We can't mention immortal people without mentioning Keith Richards. That man.
Well, you heard the joke about you saw the movie Highlander, right?
Yes, many years ago, but I have seen it.
The whole idea for people who haven't seen Highlander is there's a bunch of immortals, and the only way to kill an immortal is to chop their head off. And when this happens, that person absorbs the energy and they become stronger. So the idea is every time a rock star dies, Keith Richards gets stronger.
I've heard that. I heard that said about Ozzy too when he was still around.
Well, Keith Richards is pretty much, now that Ozzy's been absorbed into his ether, he's just never going to die now.
I saw this theory online that Ozzy didn't actually die. We all did, and we woke up in this weird reality.
Yeah, I believe that. Absolutely. Yeah, that's quite a shadow, isn't it? Goodness me.
I honestly think Ozzy just became the Grim Reaper. I think and his first thing he did was kill Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. Good on him. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he, Prince of Darkness is just what a guy. I mean, just the
larger than life,
or pure love, just absolutely. I mean, he was horrible and did awful things in the past, and all the stories that Sharon will quite happily share of the things that they went through, the fact that he tried to kill her once, and all these things. Like anyone, he's not perfect, but at the same time, right at the very end, I don't know if you saw the footage of him, the final show, the giant stage that was on a circle where the stage revolved around. Mm-hmm. There's another camera angle that's been released the other day, and he's in his throne at the very end, and it's the end of the show, everything's done, and he sort of turns around, leans out of his chair, and shouts to whoever's behind him, the stage crew, I'm imagining, to turn the fucking stage around. Like he's still got that little pissed offness about him, he's still got that grumbly old man in him. It's just right to the end, he was pure, just never lied, who is what he is and was what he was, and
I think that's what made him so admirable is not he did do fucked up things, but he never lied about it.
Yeah, everyone could relate to him. You know, him falling backwards off a chair, or complaining about the dog peeing on the carpet. Like, everyone could relate to that. That absolutely was a stroke of genius from Shearon to say, we're not going to do MTV Cribs. We want an entire show. Genius, absolute genius. And it reinvented everything. I mean, it brought back heavy metal, if you think about it. I mean, we still had the Donington Monsters of Rock, and we still had Lollapalooza and a few other things, but there really wasn't, the festivals we have today, like Hellfest, and sure, there was Dynamo over in Europe and a couple of others, but the Ozfest and that whole crew of bringing bands that no one had ever heard of into the limelight and bringing them along and really pushing things, and it just, we're never going to have that again. That's going to be a time that people will talk about, that just, unfortunately, it's a whole new generation of kids now into a whole new generation of different rock, and it's just completely fading away into something else now, and it's a shame. I'm glad we experienced it, but it's going to take Herculean effort to revive an Ozfest and maybe keep it going and bring that back. I think it was Billy Corgan after the final Back to the Beginning Sabbath show with Ozzy said, after Ozzy had passed, maybe we should do that event yearly, and everyone was saying it's called Ozfest. But you're not inventing anything, Billy. It exists. But I agree with him. We should bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
And really just push it, because that was the thing that came and went, here and there. But and we have Knotfest from Slipknot now, but it's not quite the same,
Well, the thing with Ozfest is it started as an act of rebellion.
Oh, yeah.
Ozzy was trying to get on Lollapalooza, and they said he's not mainstream enough. And Shearon said, "Fuck you, we'll do our own."
Fit, yeah. Well, okay, well, we'll fit our own then, yeah. It was brilliant, and it's what the world needed, because, as I say, we all know it brought back and new bands. It brought back all the old crew and all the new stuff. You have all the Roadrunner bands, Sepultura, Type O Negative, and then you have all Korn and even Therapy from Ireland.
Slipknot.
Yeah, just phenomenal. Static X. All these new metal bands at the time, as they were called. And then all the heavy stuff. It's just another time, But yeah, there's a lot of bands that I'd love to create for that I haven't yet. But I'm starting to do more of my own stuff more than anything else. There's also bands that already have their own artists that I have approached, but they and very admirably are loyal to those artists, such as Cannibal Corpse have their artist. So as much as I'd love to do some artwork, it would have to be tribute work, and then of course you have Derek Riggs, who does the Iron Maiden stuff, but that was one of my first gigs because they were doing a Somewhere Back in Time Again world tour, so they wanted to revive all of the old album covers and create more merchandise to represent those for this new tour. And Derek Riggs apparently was just too tired of it. He didn't have the time to do that much work, wasn't interested, was working on other things. And so I was told. So me and a lot of other artists were brought in to create new Iron Maiden artwork to go on the merchandise. And that was kind of where I began to do this kind of stuff in terms of bands anyway.
Dude, it's fascinating hearing you talk about all the people you've worked with, because I am a big fan of your art, and I didn't even realize it because I saw some of the artwork you've done for bands. I'm like, I recognize that. What art did you do for Hellbilly Deluxe 2 though? You didn't do the album art, right? You did the inner sleeve, or
those well, it's funny actually. There's I did a portrait of John 5. And Rob actually messaged me on MySpace and said, great work. He really liked it. And then, as I was saying earlier, after we met in person at Comic-Con, I was like, oh, hey, I did the John 5 thing. And he was like, oh, hey, he's a super nice guy. We kept in touch. But I then did a portrait in the same sort of way of just his head, which ended up, it's sort of him with the X carved in his forehead. And it was when he had done House of a Thousand Corpses, and so he had chopped all of his dreads off for whatever reason. And he now had sort of just shoulder length blonde bedraggled hair, because he was a film director now, and he was kind of sort of moving more in that direction. Of course, as we know, he continued, thankfully, with the heavy metal, but got his dreads back. But he ended up putting this portrait inside the Hellbilly Deluxe album sleeve, along with artwork by Dan Brereton and Alex Hawley, their artwork, which they've done a lot of stuff with Rob over the years. So to get my little piece in there on the inside of the cover was like a childhood dream in a way. It was just, what's happening? This is amazing. But after that, it was he said that if you go to the Walmart record section, the Hellbilly Deluxe version in there, Hellbilly Deluxe 2 rather, is you can't have swear words or certain imagery in Walmart editions of albums.
Mm-hmm.
Everything seems to be censored. I believe it's to do with certain Christian values or something like that. It's very parentally controlled stuff, so they don't want any cuss words or bad language or graphic violence or imagery or words, anything like that. So Hellbilly Deluxe 2 had to be censored in a certain way, and mine ended up being the only artwork inside these sleeves. So when you pull out the front cover, it folded out into a big poster, and the entire poster was this portrait that I had done of Rob. And that you can still get that in Walmart now.
Badass.
Yeah, so that was like the special edition for Walmart only. And Alex Hawley and Dan Brereton, I guess their artwork, well, I'm a big fan of their work, amazing artists. Their work, I guess, was a bit gruesome, a little violent, perhaps. The undead were in there, so I guess that's probably why they weren't included in there. I'm only guessing, but yeah. And the vinyl had it on the paper middle bit of the vinyl LP was the head that I designed as well. So really cool. Yeah, I love it.
For you, that's kind of that moment of haha, mine made it.
It's sort of like, why did mine and not theirs? It's like me of all three of us. But I'd take my hat off to Rob and his younger brother Michael, Spider One, who recently his film Little Bites vampire movie that's now on Hulu. Go and see that. But yeah, Power Man 5000. I ended up doing that full album sleeve in 2014, I think. And that was fun because one year, I'm just going to blow my trumpet here for a second, but at the Download Donington Festival in the UK, this is where the Ozfest is held occasionally over the years, but this was where Monsters of Rock has been for, decades and decades and decades. And it used to be sort of one day, and now it's a 3-day event. So you'll go and camp for the 2 days before and 2 days after. So it's a really long week of heavy metal and, loud music, drinking and everything else. But 1 year in 2014, I'd done that much artwork for so many bands that it was all on display at this festival. And this festival caters for, like a couple of 100,000 people just wandering around. And on one stage, you had the band Kill Devil Hill, which had Johnny Kelly from Type O Negative on drums. You had Rex Brown from Pantera on bass. You had Mark Zavon on guitar, and Phil Anselmo came on and sang a song with them, and the entire backdrop, Dewey Bragg as well, of course, on vocals, incredible. The entire backdrop was my artwork on this massive stage, and I mean that alone was just wow to see that. But then I went over to the main stage, and then there's Rob Zombie, and I'd just done a tour poster for him returning back to the UK after 16 years. Then his brother Power Man 5000 played on the main stage, and of course I'd just done his entire album. And then on the billboards around the arena there were huge Ministry posters, which I'd just done their live album artwork, and a bunch of stuff for them that was there. And then on another stage, a smaller stage, American Head Charge were performing, and I ended up on stage with them, and the entire backdrop of that was my artwork because I'd just done their album as well. So then there's people walking around wearing merchandise that I designed, and it was just the most batshit insane festival I've ever been to, because everywhere I looked I thought, this is all my artwork. It was incredible. Yeah,
It was Shearon Fest.
Samfest. It may have well have been, it was that I will blow my trumpet about, because it was really for me a sort of, what can I top after that? I mean, there's nothing much more I could have done really, other than paint the sky.
With the life you're living, do you even have dreams? Like,
Trust me, my girlfriend is forever saying to me, I'll come up with an idea for a book or a new series of artwork, and she'll look at me with sort of rolling her eyes, and she'll say, well, when are you going to have time to do that? Because I've got so many other things, so many irons in the fire that I dream too much. Sometimes I'm doing too many things at once, and I'll burn out for a couple of days, physically and mentally, but it's I just can't stop. I'm sort of workaholic, but creatorholic. I'm currently writing a book as well. So on the one hand, I'm putting various artwork on the shelf or on standby while I'm writing, the next short story for this horror collection. And then a band will, email me, and they'll say, oh, we need a new vinyl, a full album sleeve doing, or some cryptozoologist will email me and say, hey, I need a new book doing for this, and then I'll have to put my writing on hold again. I really wish I could just either clone myself or press pause on a time machine, get everything done, and then press unpause, and just sit back and enjoy it, because there's just not enough hours in the day. And again, running out of years, I'm 47. It's depressing, because as much as, yeah, if I live to 80, I've got about 2,000 weeks left. That's not a lot, is it?
not when you think of it that way, but
It's
like,
worse when you think of summers. It's like, what have I got? 43 summers left?
yeah, but you're also doing so much that your legacy will live on for a very long time.
That's
You,
great for whoever's around, but I won't be here.
so I was thinking the other day, me and a coworker was talking, and I showed him your work, and now he's a fan. And by the way, guys, if you want to buy the lovely art from this gentleman, the link will be in the comments below, along with your website. Have you thought about exploring, like doing art? I know you're a busy man, like of other creatures in mythology or even modern religions, like a flying spaghetti monster, for instance.
I do seem to remember you mentioning that. It's funny, because I will have ideas, as I say, just like every day. I'll see something and I'll just think, "Ooh, I could do, an entire series of the Zodiac, but in a dark, realistic style." Which I started, and I've got about 8 of them done. But then other stuff has come in, and I've still got 4 or 5 left to do. I've wanted to do an entire book on Greek monsters, characters of Greek mythology. When am I going to have time to do that? I've wanted to do an encyclopedia of cryptozoology since I was a kid. Literally from the age of 7, I've wanted to do a book cataloging every single cryptid ever, and done in a proper way. And that's the problem, is like, yes, I could probably just shit one out next year, but I don't want to do that. I'd like to meticulously get it right, because no one really ever has. I mean, I really will be pretentiously pompous and say nobody really has ever done that. There's a lot of phenomenal artists out there that will illustrate cryptids or unknown animals, as they on a scientific level will correctly be deemed as, unexplored parts of the natural world and that sort of thing. But they never quite get it right. They'll always sort of either go on a commercial view of it, where like the Mothman is considered to be this moth creature with antennae, and that's not what the Mothman is. And people will argue, well, no one knows what it is, so you're allowed to do that. That's
Hey, bro, sorry to interrupt, but I am very familiar with the Mothman. I'm about 12 minutes from West Virginia.
to visit. Awesome.
We've had Mothman sightings not far from where I live.
Perfect. Well, there you go. So what do you think the Mothman is? What do you think he looks like? Have you seen?
It's kind of hard to describe. I've never seen him, but from eyewitnesses, he's literally got red eyes and he's a giant like a shadow moth creature. And typically when Mothman is seen, a tragedy follows.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, this entity has been seen all over the world, and it's
Mhm.
become a pop culture icon again, with this moth attribution to it being like an actual giant moth. Whereas the descriptions are so varied, it really is hard to pinpoint what it is. And the idea of it being an actual animal in terms of cryptozoology as a science, it doesn't fit that at all, unless we're talking about a giant owl. So you'll have people sort of attribute the paranormal side to it, or the alien side to it, or the government experiment, freak, mutation, escaped creature side of it. And so to illustrate it correctly, you would have to do several versions of it. And that's what I'm saying is, if I was to do an encyclopedia, would I then have to do volumes? And this is where my mind spins out into depression, because there aren't enough years in life to do a volume for every single creature, because that would take, you do the math on the years it would take to do so many, and then all the other dreams of making my own films and things are suddenly just on the shelf indefinitely. So it can get a little dark at times when you have too much that you want to do.
Dude, I feel that, and I think you might have ADHD.
But then again, doesn't everybody these days? And everybody on social media has that sort of claim to it. They're either this, or they have a little bit of autism, or they're on the spectrum. And I think just everybody is. I think it's just life. And I think people deal with it in different ways, and some people deal with it by putting a label on it. And I think we're all the same in a massive spectrum of all different people. I don't think you can really shoehorn things into specific categories as a sort of, people go through life using it as a currency, or as a badge of honor, or a sort of a, how dare you, I have this, as though, oh, okay, then, have a free coffee kind of thing. That drives me mad as well. But yeah, no, I probably do have some kind of attention deficit disorder based on my absorption of so much stuff. I mean, you see here, I've just got this bookshelf full of stuff that I'll never read, but I can't help but collect the books, because you never know when you're going to read it. It's like a plastic bag in the bottom of your mum's kitchen drawer,
I'm the same way.
Of them, like, when are you going to use? You just need one plastic bag. Well, you might need two, so you best just keep keeping them, like collecting them. But yeah, I mean, I've got 6 volumes of Jim Harold's Ghost Stories and Campfire from his podcast. Jim Harold's great, but I've only read like half of one of those books because I just don't have time. And that's, yeah, it is very depressing to want to create for Alice Cooper, to want to write and direct my own films. I act as well. I was in theater. It's like, when am I going to have time for that?
You make me feel better about myself, because I have a whole bookshelf right next to me of books I haven't read, and I keep buying more. I don't know why.
Yeah, I bought books yesterday. I'm never going to read them.
I have books from like mythology, and instead of reading this damn book, I'll put on a YouTube video and go about my day. So
Yeah.
why do I need the book?
It's funny. I have a friend of mine who works for Universal, and she does these book challenges where you have a target for the number of books you're going to read in a year. And I think it got to April or May, and she'd already read like 60 books. And I'm thinking, how have you read 60 books already? I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And what she was doing was she was listening to the audiobooks on double speed while she was at work. So she was just plowing through these books with people talking incredibly quickly and somehow absorbing these stories. And now I don't know how well she's able to do this. She must have developed a knack for doing it over time, listening to it and hearing it quicker. You do, I guess, do that on YouTube. Sometimes I'll hold the button down and make it go a little quicker for people to get to the point. People are probably doing this now on me. But yeah, I can't devour a book like that because my mind wanders. I'll stop in a sentence and I'll think, oh yeah, giant white whales that swallow people. And then I'll come back and I'll be reading about something else. And then I'll have to go back and read that sentence again. And I haven't even gone through half the page. It takes me forever. So you can imagine how long it takes me to write as well, because I go off in all kinds of directions, but I'm getting there.
Artistically, I'm the same way because I started reading a book, and even though I'm really into it, 2 chapters in, next book. And quick question, because I'm this guy, so let's see if you are. How many tabs are open on your computer right now?
Let me count. Let me count. That's interesting.
We'll be back after these commercial breaks.
32.
See, I do that. I'll be playing a YouTube video, and I will be scanning to find the next video before this one even ended.
Yeah. I have 32 tabs open here, and I've got another 16 below it on the main menu thing there. Yeah.
The look on your face, you felt so called out, bro.
No, for real. Yeah. Absolutely. I have to, because that's the other thing, is when you've got a head like mine, which is constantly spinning and constantly evolving new branches of ideas, I will forget other stuff. Cobwebs will appear and they'll just start to mask those ideas and they'll be gone forever. So I have to bookmark everything. I'm also a very physical, write down, hands-on person as well. So I've got pages of notes just lying around everywhere. My entire notebook, I don't know if you can see that. It's just like paper. Just
dude, me and you will be best friends because I don't even read half of them, but to take in the knowledge, I'll write down articles that I am reading at that time.
Yeah. I have to take notes on stuff. I've got a little notepad on my phone, but then I'll transcribe that to paper because I know I'll lose it on my phone, or I have this fear of my phone, falling in a toilet or something, and then it's gone. So I have to write everything physically down in pencil so I can add to it, or quite often I'll come across a sketchbook and there'll be either a one word or a sentence, and I won't have the foggiest idea what it was about. And I'll be disappointed in myself. So now these days I'll write a little extra note next to the note to remind myself what that was about.
See, I do things where that weird thing where I become very like obsessed kind of with like one topic, like mythology lately is my one thing. And then I'll get so ingrained into it that it becomes overwhelming, and then I just move on to the next thing, and then I just pick it back up later.
Yeah, I get the same. Yeah. I have these little flashes of obsession. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, like recently, a friend of mine's like asking me questions about mythology, and another guy overheard it. And you know how people are; they assume because you're talking about it, that's your religion.
Yeah.
And they're like, "So, what do you believe?" And I'm like, "You want to know what religion I am?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, yes. Let's just say yes. Let's just." Because I'm going to hell in 4 of them.
Oh, we all are. I think I was saying this to my girlfriend the other day. It's every now and then for the last couple of months, we've had these really weird sensations while here in LA, where it's almost as though it's like, hang on a minute, after 2020, did we die and are we in purgatory? Because something doesn't feel right. Something is off. Something is really off with the world, and I'm not sure what it is or why, but something massively changed after the whole 2020 thing. And it's never been right since. And we can sort of pinpoint and say, well, of course, it was because of the pandemic. Things definitely did change. Of course they did. But there's something else going on. And it is almost as though we've slipped into another reality where it's, not everything matters anymore. Ozzy Osbourne's dead. It's just strange. Things are changing and I don't like it. Don't like it at all.
It kind of adds to the theory that none of us truly die. When we die, we slip into a different reality. And that's why like things like the Mandela effect happen.
Oh yeah. That one.
We die in that reality and then we wake up in a whole different one. And it's a very interesting theory. And then there's the other theory that all of us are already dead and we're living that last 10 seconds during the death period.
Yeah, I've heard that one. Yeah. I've had dreams as a kid, and I'm not talking about reincarnation, but I've had dreams of things when I was as young as 5 that I remembered all the way through my childhood after I'd had them. They were so horrific that I wonder whether they were some kind of past life or a memory or a look into something else, because there's no way they at age 5 I could have had these images in my head. And it does make me wonder, is, the idea of time being linear, well, it's just a construct that we have a measurement for us to understand, but the idea of time going in every direction all around us all at once is a new one that is fascinating to me. The whole idea that there are layers of reality that obviously on the color spectrum and the sound spectrum that we can't see or hear, because it's tuned into a different frequency. And maybe that will explain what ghosts are, and all of these other things. Absolutely fascinates me, because with your ideas there on the ancient mythologies, and the idea of monsters and gods and ancient heroes, were they tapping into something that we don't have anymore, or was that their way of explaining things that they could see? Has the atmosphere changed so we can't tap into it anymore? I don't know. But that is a weird one, isn't it? Are we all in the Matrix? Absolutely.
That leads to the next thing I was going to bring up, because the whole Matrix idea actually came from the old Gnostic belief, or even the Hindu belief, that we're actually in a dream realm. In Hindu, it's Brahma, but in Gnosticism, it's just the God of the Old Testament, where it's believed that we're just dream creations of that God. And H.P. Lovecraft even covered that with Azathoth. What if we're just in a grand dream and we're in control of this, but we think we're not?
Yeah. I would hate to think that we die and there's nothing. And I'd hate to think that this is a dream, in all honesty. I'd like to think that we do go somewhere after this. Not in a sort of sitting on a cloud playing a harp, because I can't think of anything more boring than that. But I would like to, the idea of, like, every day I wake up, some days I think, oh, I'm here again, or, oh, it's this level, or as I was saying before, something feels off. I'm almost having a existential crisis where I'm starting to recognize. Sometimes I'll look at my hand, and people might think I'm crazy, but sometimes I'll look at my hand and I'll be lying in bed and I'll just be thinking, so this is it then. This is what I'm in right now. This is it. This is the thing. And I'm looking out of my eyes, of course, out of my face. I'm looking around, and I'm very aware of being inside this meat thing. And things are starting to hurt as I'm getting older. Things aren't, working as well. I can't do as many push-ups anymore, or, I'll do 10 pull-ups on the doorway bar, and all of a sudden it feels like I've broken my arm. And I just think, this can't be it. There has to be something else. But it also, at the exact same time it's happening, it feels as if I already know it. It's like I've done this. I recognize this. This is all too familiar. It's like a TV show I've seen before, or it's the next episode of a show that I'm following, and I'm so familiar with it now. It's just really, really uneasy, very, very odd.
I've grappled my whole life with a fear of death, to be honest. And as I traveled down the rabbit hole of like mythology and all of that, I'm starting to think that there is something that happens after this, but I don't think it's like a torture realm or anything like that. I think we all just tap into the universal consciousness that we all share. I like to think this is a simulation. This is the universe experiencing itself and creating this grand thing. But after this, we just go right back to that universal consciousness. Whether or not that consciousness goes back into human form, animal form, or whatever is to be decided. But I think kind of like the Hindus believed, where you keep coming here, you learn lessons until you become godlike, as in you're with that entire consciousness. Because when you become universal consciousness, you get to visit your ancestors, because you are your ancestors. You're all together as one and at peace.
I really feel that to be the one thing that makes the most sense, in terms of, you could say that the whole reincarnation thing and the the different castes of people and all the different animals. Oh, if you're bad, you'll come back as a worm. That whole world of those beliefs of that part of the world all tend to sort of make sense in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with the familiarity of, you'll listen to Black Sabbath Sabotage, and you can hear that album 5 or 6 times over, and then all of a sudden you'll just sort of, you won't have to listen to it anymore. But when it comes on in a bar, you just think, oh yeah, it's that record I own that I haven't heard for a few years, but I know it. So when you die and you come back as a dog, you might not ever see your owner, or you might not even be in the same country perhaps, but that energy and that vibe, you're a dog. And no one needs to teach you the language of what the word dog is or the concept of how a person sees a dog. You are just a dog, and you just live it, and you know it, and you're fine with it, and you're comfortable with it. And I think a lot of, you want to call them lesser animals, because I do think that everything is relative in terms of intelligence. Even plants think. So I'll tell you something about a plant in a minute. It blew my mind. But I think the idea of coming back as me and my girlfriend have joked about it, where we've said, well, what if in this reality right now, there's only one time? There's no like the next time. This is time. This is now. And so maybe my girlfriend is me, and I'm talking to myself, and vice versa. And at one point I was my mum, and at one point I was my dog, or I was a guy I passed in an elevator in Chicago one time going through an airport. Maybe I was that guy that day. But it's all happening at the same time, and we are all the same thing. We're just taking turns jumping in and out of existence.
That actually adds to what I was going to say. We are all, consciousness more than likely doesn't exist up here. It comes here from the universe. Mm-hmm. So we all share that same exact consciousness, which explains why, like, let's say me and you's hanging out, and somebody says something and we both think similar things, and we look at each other and we both laugh. That happens a lot. We didn't share words, but we knew what the other person was thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a funny one. That does happen a lot. And it happens with people you hang out and click with, like me and you click. We are very similar. And so there's absolutely a guarantee that if we were to hang out, we would have more idiosyncrasies and coincidences of conversations and our line of thought. We might see, a book in a shop, and we might both go and grab for it and then fall out because we both wanted that book. That kind of, those groups of people will stick together, definitely as a thing. But it makes you wonder, are we all the same because of that, or are we just on a familiarity kick why people are drawn to other people? But there's that other element of, you can be in a room where you'll get a vibe from someone and they don't even have to speak, they don't even have to look at you, but you just know that they are pure evil. There's something off about them, there's something wrong with them, there's something that's just pure darkness. And that makes me wonder, you can go down a whole rabbit hole of, well, are they even a person? Are they just wearing a person and that's actually something else? And the whole idea of ghosts and the popular trope on the TV shows about, oh, it's a demon. Well, that word to me is ridiculously overused, and it doesn't mean what it is. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, because I was going to go down that rabbit hole. So for those listening, we did go down this rabbit hole with my buddy Jeremy, but demon, to those listening that got the Christian definition, it is not an evil spirit in the original sense. It is literally just spirit or guardian spirit. It is the original concept of a guardian angel. Sorry to interrupt. I had to get that out of my system.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the interjection. Yeah, I was going to say, maybe there are entities that on these shows they call demons, but maybe there are things that were never human that we don't have a name for because we can't see them, but they can see us, they can play with us, they can mock us and have their own fun. Or maybe they're just a sort of an organism, a type of an animal that we can't see, that will feed off an energy, and it's not got any malicious intent, much like a tiger hasn't got malicious intent, but it needs to eat, so it will kill. Mm-hmm. I think those things exist. I've had shadows run into the room and stand next to the bed. That's happened on 2 occasions. The whole sort of the shadow person sleep paralysis, that's only ever happened twice, and only in the last 6 years. Prior to that, it was just something I'd read about and I was like, oh, fascinating, one of those, old hag syndromes or whatever. But then it happened, and that makes me think, well, what was that? Was that an organism that just happened to be in the area that came into my room? Was that just another entity of life or something that we don't have a name for, that other people might call demon in these popular TV shows? But yeah, it really makes you wonder about time and space. And
what's kind of interesting to me, because a lot of people will view that as like an entity that they should like, that works with them, or a guardian angel or a guardian demon or whatever you want to call it. And getting back to the term demon, a lot of people have bad views on them because of The Exorcist, because Pazuzu possessed this girl. Now, what don't make sense to me, and I feel it's very deliberate, Pazuzu was never an evil entity according to the mythology it came from. He was actually a protector spirit.
Yeah, I believe his wife was worse.
Lamashtu was his enemy, and that's who the movie kind of got the idea from. But Pazuzu looked evil because he was kind of like, don't judge a book by its cover.
Mm-hmm.
He was a protector, but he had to look that way to scare off worse entities.
Yeah. It's funny. You make me think of, again, going on a natural basis, again, back to the idea that I will create artwork in the most realistic sense that I can, is what would it look like if it did exist?
Mm-hmm.
I will draw from natural history. And growing up in England, I would always be in the natural history museums, again, like in Liverpool, and I'd be sitting under dinosaur skeletons or looking at the taxidermy, and I have a big taxidermy collection as well now. And it just fascinates me, all these different animals. But the one thing that got me was, we were talking about something that has, like Pazuzu has to look a certain way for a certain effect. Butterflies that have the wings that look like an owl's face when they open their wings.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the big round circular patterns on these tiny little metallic scales on these butterfly wings that just happen to look like an owl, but not just, kind of like an owl. We're talking exactly like an owl.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it just, I can't wrap my head around it. And I've had so many discussions with, naturalists and zoologists about it. But the idea that there are moths that look like little broken twigs when their wings are folded. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy that has, you might have seen the video where he's holding a couple of broken twigs that look like silver birch branches that are sort of dark at the end. And then they've got the broken part of the branch is light, almost like pine on the inside. And these moths look exactly like these things. Mm-hmm. And the problem I have, now I understand evolution is a wonderful thing, and it takes eons of unfathomable time of variation to them to survive. Maybe one looked a certain way so it didn't get eaten by a lizard or whatever. And time goes on and they morph in a certain way. But there's many times when I'll sit there and I'll just think, no, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. That is a choice. That creature has decided to look like that. That cannot be chance. That cannot be evolutionary chance. There's a caterpillar that hangs off the branch, and its abdomen swells up, but just the very end of it, so that it's a sort of an almost triangular shape at the very back end of this caterpillar, and it moves around very fluidly while it's hanging off a branch, and it's green with the brown stripes down the side, and it has 2 eyes on the end, and it literally looks like a snake. And then to me, how does it know? How does it know? Does it not? Because here's what we're saying. Here's what I've been told, and how it's been explained to me is this caterpillar has no idea that it looks like a snake. It has no clue. It doesn't even know what a snake is, but it just happens to look exactly like the neighbor snake. So therefore, birds don't eat it. And it just happens to move in the same way so that birds don't eat it. And I just think that's too far-fetched for me to believe, and I can't wrap my head around it. To me, that is choice.
Now, a lot of people will claim God.
That's the other thing. This is what I'm trying to get at, because, and I was waiting for this, because some people will go, and there's the wonderful creator. And I just have to wonder, I really have to wonder.
Well, in my opinion, when I hear, now I used to like fight the whole God word, but nowadays my view on God is not like anybody else's. I think it's a symbolic term to describe nature and the universe around us.
Yeah. I mean, I will refer to the universe, or the powers that be, as this thing, and I'm more and more inclined to it being a one thought organism, like a mushroom in a way, an invisible fungus that is so massive it stretches into everything, and is, omnipresent, super intelligent, is everywhere at once, just as we've been told. Jesus is everywhere.
Yeah.
Even when you're in the bath, he's there.
The only thing I don't agree with is that he's not benevolent or malevolent. He just, that omniscient being, or whatever you call it, that is nature or Earth itself, doesn't care about day-to-day life. It just is there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have an emotion, or, like I was saying earlier, a tiger isn't malicious. It doesn't mean to be horrible and mean to a deer or a gazelle or a pig. It has to eat that. It doesn't run up to the pig and say, "I hate you." And then
could you imagine?
Because it doesn't. It has no reason to hate it. But what if it did? Yeah.
Could you imagine that episode of Animal Planet? he walks up, a tiger walks up to a pig and is like, "Fuck you," and starts eating it.
Yeah, you just have a whole series of Sir David Attenborough, and the tiger delivers the insult.
Your mom is a pig.
I hate you. Yeah.
That shit's funny.
You can hear it say.
That shit's crazy. Is there anything that you wanted to promote while you're on here? Because I know we've been talking about all kinds of various topics, and that's what's going to happen when people come on this show, obviously. But I want to help you promote as well. Is there any upcoming events or anything that you're up to?
Well, currently, as I say, I'm writing this book. In terms of when it's released, I've no idea yet. Excuse me, but look out for that. What I will say is that I draw live every week. And so if you want to get the scoop or hear me ramble like I've been rambling here about all kinds of weird stuff about monsters and rock, or who I'm creating for next or currently, or if you just want to hang out and talk about, ghosts and weird shit, then that's fine. I'll draw live, and there's a chat there. And I've currently set up a thing that I was going to ask you about it, actually, through StreamYard. Apparently there's a way where you can go live simultaneously across all different platforms.
That's what I'm using right now. And yes, you can. If you pay for it, it allows you to stream, I believe, for the one I've got, like 4 or 5 platforms at once.
Yeah. So I'll be doing that, because originally I was drawing through Patreon, which you can quite happily go and support me there. If you want to throw $1 in there, it all helps. But I'll draw live. I think I usually do it on a Wednesdays for an hour or 2 on Patreon, which is a little different to the public live. So you get sort of extra scoops and secret stuff going on, sketches that no one sees. But yeah, generally, I think the way to go forward with the live drawing is I'll be doing this on YouTube and Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, all at once. Currently trying to set that up, so I'll pick your brains about that later. But yeah, I mean, if anything, yeah, as you mentioned before, the prints that I'm selling in the big cartel store, if you want to get free shipping, not sure when you're going to put this out.
In the next couple days.
Okay. Then you can use Summerween, and you can get free shipping on the prints, or on anything, playing cards, greeting cards that I sell. It's all on there.
I don't edit this. It's a raw conversation. So I usually just download it either tomorrow or the next day and upload it.
That's great. Yeah.
So, it's recorded. So I don't, I don't plan on ever editing this show. I've had several mishaps of like audio and stuff, and I just rolled with it.
Right. You live once, right? Apparently.
Yeah. Well, and I hope that if there is reincarnation, me and you meet each other again as a tree or a flower. Oh,
mean, no doubt we're already doing that simultaneously now, whereas you are me and I'm you, and we are already talking again. So
True. And it's weird that you mention that, because sometimes when I'm talking to somebody, I feel like we relate at such a level. And I feel that with you, not to be weird or anything, but I feel like I relate to somebody at such a level. We are different, but I feel like we're similar beings and we're sharing a consciousness.
yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I like that.
It's very interesting.
We both have long hair and beards and white skin. You know,
Yeah. And
clearly we're both incredibly handsome. So, you know.
yeah, and according to some belief systems, we're both Satanists. We're
If that's the label people want to choose. Okay.
see. I don't label myself anything. I just call myself spiritual. But if you want to like put a label on it, go ahead.
I would just call myself artist. That's about it.
Dark artist. You got to add the dark part.
Sure. Yeah. People always throw that out there. People, I don't know where that began, but yeah, people label me as dark artist or dreaded Mister Sam Shearon. I don't know where that came from.
Well, that kind of hints that there's possibly a light artist somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there are many. Yeah.
They're not as popular.
Well, maybe more popular. That's the annoying thing. And they probably use AI as well.
See, with me, I agree with you. Art has no place in AI, but AI is a useful tool for like doing research or
Is
getting
it though?
ideas.
It gets so much wrong as well. Have you noticed?
Yes, it does. But if you know what to type in, you can have AI argue with itself and give you sources as to why it's arguing with itself.
That's fun. Yeah. I did. I was doing a Bigfoot project a little while ago, and I was trying to differentiate all the living greater apes that we have today, all the simian apes. So you have, your orangutans and the gorillas and the chimps and that kind of thing. So I wanted to create a sort of definitive list to break from there and see where I could fit in the evolutionary scale of humans and Neanderthals and Denisovans and all the other humans, Australopithecines and all these other archaic hominids, and build a sort of a family tree. And so I asked Google AI whether there was a subspecies known in the chimp category as a billy ape, because I had heard about this large chimp that was also known locally in the Congo as a leopard killer, and that they would use spears. And I thought, well, this is fascinating, and that they had only been discovered in 2010.
Mhm.
And so this chimp that was supposed to be the size of a gorilla, so it's a very, very big chimp, was more aggressive. It could walk upright occasionally, used sticks and spears to kill leopards and eat them, and it lived only in the Congo. And I thought, this is incredible. And it said it was photographed and confirmed for the first time in 2010. So I did a little dig deep and found that this didn't exist, that in fact it did and it didn't. And this is where AI became a problem, because on the one hand, I asked with a capital letter, capital D, does the billy ape exist? ? And then I asked the same question, but lowercase d, does the billy ape exist, without a question mark? Two different answers. Same question, two different answers. And the only thing I changed was the capitalization at the beginning of the sentence and removing the question mark at the end. And it gave me two different answers. One was yes, it does. And the other was no, this is just another group of chimpanzees and has been miscategorized. It's exactly the same genus in DNA. It's chimps. It's not, there's no such thing as a billy ape, essentially. So AI was really naughty in the sense that unless you have good grammar, and let's be fair, a lot of people today don't, thanks to AI, because everyone's lazy, then you're going to be typing in things and getting the wrong results. And so I think we're on the precipice of a very dangerous age where we're already seeing people just acting like complete dumbasses online. I saw a video, just real quick, it's going off on a tangent here, but there was a girl who was talking on this like chat roulette thing, and there was a guy doing a magic trick, and he put down 3 playing cards. He had pack of playing cards, and he said, think of a number. She said 12. He shuffled it and put down 3. He said, pick 2 cards. As she goes, that one and that one. And he removes the 3rd card. And then he holds these 2 up and he goes, okay, it's the 2 of diamonds and the 10 of hearts. Add those together, and that's the number you said, 12, right? And she was like, oh my God, yeah, let me just get my calculator and check. And I thought, what? Wait a minute. What's more amazing, the magic trick or the fact that she had to use a calculator to add 2 and 10? And we're not talking about a 6-year-old. This girl looked, I'll be generous and say she was 18. She looked like she was in her 20s. And I'm thinking, how is she, who's not teaching kids basic maths? Who's not teaching them this? And also, you don't even need to be taught that. You can figure that out. You really can. I
think the key is the magic sentence with citing your sources, because AI will cite where they're getting that information. And if they don't give one, then take it for what it is.
But that's the other thing. There's what's the actor's name who's in Doctor Strange?
What's his name? Cumberpatch. Benedict Cumberpatch. Him?
No, the other Benedict, the Asian guy.
I'm awful with names, dude.
His name is the same. His last name is the same name as the character in Doctor Strange, the Asian magician, the big set fella.
Oh, I don't know his name. I don't think
it's not Huang. Anyway, his first name is also Benedict, funnily enough. And I went to see Weapons horror movie the other night at the cinema. Great film. Go see it. He's in that. And I wanted to Google, because I couldn't remember his last name. So I Googled it to find out what his last name was, and I found it straight away. But then, interestingly enough, it listed all the other things he'd been in. And it incorrectly said that he was the guy or the character Henry Wu in Jurassic Park. And it's not him at all. That's a different actor. But it listed that was him. And I just think, AI is ruining things. It's putting out information that just simply isn't true. It's frightening. It's absolutely frightening.
It's getting to the point where you don't even know if a video of somebody is actually them, which means that eventually politicians can claim they didn't say something they said.
Well, this is it. I mean, that's already happening, isn't it? There's already video of, pick a side, whichever team has said a certain thing, and they're already denying stuff. And, it's only going to get worse. And then we're going to have the thought police knocking on the door in the form of a robot. You see these robot police already walking around in Tokyo as these test models of fully 6-foot, Robocop, basically. And you think 20 years down the line from now, that's going to be frightening, where they will knock on their door and they're going to say, oh, so you don't like this, or you have political disagreements with this idea. And it's going to get really frightening.
I feel an idiocracy.
Yeah. I mean,
back to that 2020 thing you're talking about, because that's what we woke up in this timeline. So back to Bigfoot, though, I find it fascinating because
back to Bigfoot. I love that touch. You just
yeah. Let's just change the subject, because that's an uncomfortable one.
Yeah,
so you're fascinated with Sasquatch. Is that safe to say?
Sure. Yeah. Fascinated. Obsessed. Fascinated. Yeah.
So do you think Bigfoot is more than likely could be Neanderthal, or do you think just a really large gorilla, or an oversized hairy human could possibly be an uncle? I don't know. Like, do you think?
I mean, well, here's the thing. I think first and foremost, I think there's no question that they're out there. Mm-hmm. As to whether quite as many in so many places is another thing, because you do have the sort of, anyone who's interested in the field will know that Bigfoot is seen or reported to have been seen in every single state in the US and Canada, all the provinces. It's everywhere. But then it is also seen in various countries across Europe and the Middle East and throughout India, and then up into Tibet, Bhutan, and of course the Himalayas, then on into China, and then even in Japan, and then down into New Zealand and Australia, and of course throughout Africa. We have all of these sightings for a very, very similar mystery ape. And whether you want to call it an ape, as you mentioned there, in terms of a sort of a gorilla kind of creature, or whether it's a relict, sort of a human offshoot on the family tree, maybe a little earlier offshoot, a more primitive, larger, stupider, hairier version of Homo something from a lot earlier on the family tree that branched
kind
out.
of like Neanderthal
In a way, but it's more likely to be because Neanderthal are shorter than us. So these things are often described as being between 7 and 8 feet tall on average. So we're talking about what kind of archaic human type would fit that? Well, the whole spectrum of the I can't even spit it out now.
It sounds like you're trying to name an old Greek goddess.
It's Australopithecus, because some people will say Australopithecus, and it's wrong. It's not Australia. It's Australopithecus. Southern.
That's a hard word.
There's several that are even worse. But the main sort of argument is that a lot of this Heidelbergensis, which comes from a different part of the world, and everyone will say, well, how did they get to North America? And, why would they be there if the fossils are only found in South Africa? And so you have that whole dilemma of, well, that fits the model. Australopithecus will be the type you want, but it doesn't. There's no fossil record of it in North America. And I'll say, well, we haven't found them yet. You can look at chimps. There are no fossil records of chimps, but we have chimps. So they evolved from something, but we have no fossil records of chimps. But they're around today. So, that you could argue there's no fossil records of modern humans because we haven't been around that long to have fossil records of us. We're still evolving now. And if you look at the human race as we are today, Homo sapien, we've got so many different versions of us across the globe, whether you're white, black, yellow, red, if you want to use that color category of people. The way we look just physically is so variable, and yet we're all the same. We're all sort of from the same origins, and yet even by race that we're made up of different types that are not found in other races. So we are all different across the world, very much so. And I think the idea of Bigfoot is quite possibly something that's surviving or just hanging on to existence, that's on another family tree, just like the chimp is, on a lot lower branch, but more leaning towards us, like Neanderthal, but something else, or Neanderthal, as someone would say from a German perspective. But I think Bigfoot is definitely some kind of human. You only have to look at the footprints. They're not ape feet, because ape feet are kind of like a hand. They got the divergent toe, don't they, sticking out the side. Their feet almost look like hands, whereas Bigfoot tracks are clearly human shape. So to me, it's a no-brainer. They're clearly some kind of human. Other people will describe them when they've come face to face. Hunters will say that they look more gorilla-like in the face. Other people will say that they look like giant Native Americans. And then if you go back to the 18th century, we've got these stories of giant burial mounds all across America, with giant 9 feet tall Native Americans that Native Americans would actually call the other tribe or big brother or the equivalent of, whereas other tribes will describe them as mountain devils or mountain cannibals. Well, if it's cannibal, then they're the same as us. So we're already sort of, pulling little strings together to sort of say, well, yeah, they have to be a kind of a people. Smithsonian took all the skeletons in the 1800s, locked them away in a drawer. There's a famous tale of a boat full of thousands of these bones that was then deliberately dumped into the harbor up in New York, and those bones now sit uh, you know, rotting away in the port of New York. And yet other people will say that we've got bones in drawers in various museums that are catalogued as something like maybe Australopithecus. But it is, in fact, that's what a Bigfoot is. So maybe we already have Bigfoot bones. And if the DNA is anything like ours, maybe even the same, we're just, again, physically different because it's another race. Maybe they're just giant, hairy people. We don't know. We don't know, of course. But people are seeing something. There's no question. I've spoken to God knows how many witnesses that you can't, when someone's lying, in your sort of gut feeling, in your heart of hearts, you can believe or want to believe as much as possible, as much as you'd like. But when someone's telling you a story and they're crying and they have to stop and catch their breath because they're reliving it, that's really weird. That's really weird, because they're not talking about a bear. They're talking about seeing a person covered in hair that was bigger than them, and that they were suddenly, their whole world, comes crashing down, and they're terrified and they're scared for their kids that are with them camping. And they're saying that, even if they shot this thing, it wouldn't have mattered. It was so big. Just the fear, the things that people talk about. And you hear it time and time and time again on various podcasts. Now, admittedly, a lot of people will retell stories because people like to spin stories. That's just part and parcel of it. It's just how we are as people, human nature. We like to spin yarns. But you will get stories that you'll have never heard before that will describe the same things other people have seen in a different state. There's even footprints where the fingerprints or the dermal ridges on the toe impressions are in the mud, are found on the footprints, to the point where you've got forensics from police departments have analyzed them independently and haven't been told what they are. And they've said, yeah, this is a real animal. Where did you get it? What is it? It looks very human, but it's too big. All of these pieces of evidence all point to it being a real thing. And I think, to end it all, I'll say, I'll quote Sir David Attenborough, back to that old chap. Sir David Attenborough once said, when he was asked what his thoughts are on the Yeti, which is just another form of it in another part of the world, he said, nobody climbs 9,000 feet up a mountain to fake a footprint on the off chance that someone might find it. Something's out there leaving footprints, and people are saying something. So I've no question they're out there. I've never seen one.
I don't know what makes them so unbelievable, though, because we have proven animals that if you were to look at them as if something we haven't discovered yet, they're not believable, like the platypus, the giraffe. If you were to explain these animals, even the platypus was viewed as a cryptid up until the early 1900s?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they thought it was fake. They thought it was sewn together, like the old Fiji mermaids, which was a half a fish and half a monkey. They thought it was just a sideshow gimmick. Because, again, you've got this giant duck's bill, webbed feet with venom in its claws. They glow in the dark. They have a beaver's tail. They lay eggs, and they're blind. And you just think, what the fuck is that?
Kind of like the giraffe. If you look at it right now, you're like, it's kind of stupid to think it wouldn't exist.
Oh, yeah.
But if you was out in the wild and you're like, I saw this cheetah with a 12-foot neck, you'd be like, what the fuck did you see?
That was the original description, wasn't it? It was a 25-foot tall monster, but most of its length is its neck. It looks like a camel, but it has the spots and patterns of a leopard. So they called it a camelopard. Camel leopard. It has horns on its head, but there are round balls on the end of the horns, so they're almost useless. And it's a vegetarian. And you just think, that can't exist.
I didn't know all those details. That is fascinating. So when did they discover that giraffes were actually real?
I'm not sure. It's going to be 100 years ago, isn't it? But the same thing with the giant panda. That was a myth. A bear that doesn't eat meat, and it's black and white, and it lives in a jungle. So why is it not camouflaged? That makes no sense at all. Why would it be black and white and it vegetarian. What, eats bamboo? What are you talking about? But
I
then
have
they found him.
I have a quote for you before we wrap things up. I do have a quote to add to what we're talking about. And I would love to have a part two because we have a lot more we can cover and unwrap.
Yeah.
But the quote I heard is reality was not meant to make sense.
It's a good one.
Reality. I forget who said that, but reality. And another good quote from Socrates is the only thing I know is that I don't know.
I like that one. Yeah. The more you know, the more you don't know is a good one. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. My mum brings that up a lot.
Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is the more you open your mind and question things and ask things and learn things, the more you realize what you didn't know before wasn't right. And then once you learn this information, it might not be right either. I did a seminar recently called The Art of Not Knowing, and it's basically accept you don't know anything and accept any information as not true or could be true until you find more information, and be open to even changing that opinion because reality changes.
Oh yeah, especially when we have things like the Mandela effect happening. Yeah.
Is it Berenstain or Berenstein Bears?
There's so much. Yeah. The latest one I've heard about is the medical side of things. Like, where's your heart on your body? Where's your heart?
Left side, right? Or right side?
Apparently it's, I used to do the hand on the left side of you, like the military kind of thing. Hand on heart, when you swear on something.
It's on the right side, ain't it?
Apparently your heart's in the middle. To me, it was always on the left. But
I thought it was on the left because you put your right hand over your heart when you say like the pledge or whatever.
Yep. But apparently, no. It's there's a Mandela effect where it's in the middle, and it's always been in the middle.
Isn't it weird how most of the things we do in life is like a ritual? If you actually look at it from like a magic perspective, because like the Pledge of Allegiance, whatever, you're literally putting your hand over your heart and performing a dedication ritual to your government or to whatever establishment. Funerals or death rituals, even in churches when they drink blood and eat the cracker, it's literally a blood ritual. Like every life is ritual.
Yeah, it's very weird. Very weird. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
But I'm going to wrap this up because I don't want to go another 2 hours. I know you're a busy man. You're going to start doing art on this live stream.
Again, yeah, for sure.
But let's do it again here in maybe like another month or so. Once you get that book written, though, I would love to check it out. I'll even pay you for the physical copy if you don't want to send me just the PDF file.
I'll draw it. Yeah, I'll give you a little doodle.
Just a little stick figure. I don't need anything special.
Yeah.
But thank you.
It's been great meeting you. And good chatting to you finally, Mike.
Pleasure.
All the best to you and your father. And I hope you have an easy week.
I appreciate it.
And I will definitely talk to you soon, my friend. This has been fun.
Of course. Blessed be. And all of the links will be in the description below once this is posted. I'll see you, brother.